Well, welcome. Here we are in our ministry outreach. We've come to Glasgow to do some ministry outreach, but I couldn't possibly go through Glasgow without coming to the famous Barrowland ballroom. And you're probably wondering why we've stopped here, why we're doing a little bit of filming here, because here, some 50 years ago, the murders were committed by a man they known as Bible John. Now, Bible John's a very interesting character because he was never caught for his crimes, and to our knowledge, he murdered 3 women. He may have even murdered more that we never heard about. Several of his victims were able to escape from his clutches, and the thing that made it so interesting was that he appeared to be very nice, he appeared to be very cordial, very sociable, invited them along for a drink, and then he suddenly changed and started quoting Bible verses. He seemed to be very much into Moses and what Moses would say and so forth. But most of the victims, and I think 3 of the victims who were murdered, met him at this ballroom, the Barrowland ballroom. He obviously came here looking for his victims, the young ladies who came here probably on a Friday night or a Saturday night, probably working some of the factories around here, which are no longer here, of course, would have met him there. Must have been a very charming man, perhaps a very handsome man. From some of the descriptions, he looks very much like a film star. But they obviously went off with him, and 3 of them were murdered. The crimes have never been solved to this day. Many suspects have been put out. There's a man currently serving time up in Scotland at the moment. I'm not going to name him, you can look him up yourself. He is accused of being Bible John, but I have my doubts about that, and I'll tell you why in a minute. An investigative journalist about 20 years ago named a top man in the Scottish CID, DCI, who was responsible for it, but we don't really know. Some years ago we were doing some street work in Manchester, James and myself, and a little Scotsman came up. He must have been about 70, and he took a tract, and I said, "You born again?" He said, "Yes." I don't know whether he was or not. And I said, "Oh, Glasgow?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Oh, Bible John." "Oh, Bible John." He went straight into it. He told me all about Bible John. He'd been to this ballroom when Bible John was initiating this reign of terror on his future victims. He knew all about the case. And I said, "What is your theory of who this person Bible John was?" He said, "Well, I can tell you what, the man they're naming who's serving time for the serial murders in Scotland is not Bible John." Because he said, "I was in the same wing as he was, I knew him, he used to be in the same games room as I was. He knew nothing about the Bible. He wasn't interested in the Bible. You might as well have given him a Quran to read in Iranian. He wasn't interested, it wasn't him." So I said, "What about this theory of this top detective in the Scottish CID who was investigating the case?" He said, "There's your man. There's your man." I said, "Really?" I said, "Is he still alive?" "No." He said, "I think several years later he either died or committed suicide, and after that the murders went cold." Now, there was DNA rescued from the victims of these 3 murders, and I believe that some years ago they took some DNA court order from the man who's serving time in prison at the moment, matched it with the DNA in the victims, but unfortunately it had been contaminated too much. They couldn't get a reading at all. Too many hands had handled it there. So we'll never know what it all happened, but this is it. This is the Barrowland ballroom. Looks pretty run down, pretty depressing. Very sad that these women came here. And I seem to remember that some other victims were tied in with Bible John as well. Why he was quoting the Bible, why he came, what the idea was, who was behind it, why did it suddenly stop? Who knows? But the Barrowland ballroom, still standing, a lot of history around here. Probably came out of that door there with his victims, walked over here, got in a car, taxi, took them off and murdered 3 of them. And he may even have murdered more. So that's really just a brief presentation from this ministry before we go off to Glasgow now to get our banner up, give some Bible tracts out. It's our last full day. We all go home tomorrow. Our friends go back to Spain. And it's been a very successful outreach. And this is the area where it all happened. Probably a lot of secrets around here. So from this ministry, Ex-Catholics for Christ, from Barrowland Ballroom, the murders that were never solved and probably never will be, we say thank you and Maranatha.